Let's get started. Harris and Walz are returning to the campaign trail. What's going on there? Polls are actually showing that the Harris momentum is growing. There is a post-DNC bump, and you can see it now. Here's a Quinnipiac national poll showing Kamala Harris at 49% to Donald Trump's 48%. In their full release, Kamala Harris is up 2 in a multi-candidate field with RFK on the ticket, up 1 in a two-way. Okay. So we are going to be we're going to be paying some close attention to all that good stuff. Okay. Anyway, what will they learn from this? On that new Quinnipiac poll, 49% say Trump would handle the Gaza war better than Harris. Of course they are. You want to know why? Do you want to know why they say that? Because Trump keeps saying, I'm a fucking peace candidate. Okay. I'm a peace candidate. And people keep hearing that he's a peace candidate. People keep hearing the point that he keeps reiterating over and over and over again, where he says, no new wars under my administration, which is obviously a fucking lie, but it doesn't matter. Okay? No new wars under my administration, and is obviously a fucking lie, but it doesn't matter. People literally remember that, and then they look at like Ukraine, and they attribute that to Biden. They look at Gaza, they attribute that to Biden. Kamala Harris has an opportunity to separate herself from the Biden ticket on this issue. Okay? Are Americans low-key stupid? Americans are high-key stupid. They are high-key stupid, not low-key stupid. They're stupid as fuck. Harris's message wasn't working. Yeah, I saw this. Harris kept most of Biden's team in place, but the main architect of the Biden campaign messaging strategy, Mike Donilon, has fucking finally left and returned to the White House. So we shall see if this changes the pace at all. Okay? But you have to understand something. We're going to be looking at that Quinnipiac poll a bunch, okay? Why wouldn't they hear Trump say that he wants Israel to finish the job? Because, and this is very important for a lot of people to understand, if you have some level of charisma, people literally make up what the fucking policies are in terms of what their personal opinion is. And this especially works when you are not the fucking current president, so you are not currently responsible for the onslaught. So some people look at Trump and think in their minds that he's going to be much better than Kamala Harris and Joe Biden on Gaza. Some and better in terms of like he's going to stop the fucking fighting, okay? Some people look at it and they think, "Oh, he's going to go extra hard and then they're going to end up he's going to give Israel all the tools that Israel needs to finish the job and then the fighting is going to stop." Okay? This is a pretty normal part of politics. A lot of Americans, especially in the Republican Party, a lot of people that vote for Republicans don't actually associate the real negative consequences of the legislation that they're signing on for. This is a well-documented phenomena. Okay? You need to understand this. This is something that plagues American politics. And it's something that plagues politics in general. People genuinely think, oh, I'm voting for this guy because this, right? They don't really think what the policies are going to end up. They don't really consider how those policies are going to end up harming themselves. A great example of this is obviously on the issue of abortion. There are plenty of Republicans that voted for the Republican Party. They didn't really care about abortion rights being restricted. And now they're like, oh my God, this is actually devastating. What the fuck? Because all of a sudden, there's no way you can message out of it. Everybody now knows you are responsible for all of the women in places like Texas, in places like Ohio, that can't get fucking ectopic pregnancies dealt with. The medical procedure is an abortion. And now they're in a panic state because Republicans shut that access off. They are responsible for it. They have to fucking live with that reality. Do you understand? Yeah, Missouri, Amendment 3, enshrine a right to an abortion. Yes. No, 34%. yes, 52%. President Donald Trump, 54%. Kamala Harris, 41%. Okay? Josh Hawley, 53%. Lucas Kunce, 42%. So you need to understand something, okay? You need to understand something. Americans do not make smart choices when they are voting. Part of that reason is because neither party truly represents their best interests, so politics just gets divvied out to team sports. A lot of people think, oh, I'm voting on harm reduction on the Democratic Party side, but ultimately they're just voting on team sports. Harm reduction is just a layer of moralizing that you are tacking on to why you're making the decision that you're making. So in a way, it's both the dumbest people that don't vote, and it's also somewhat the smartest people that don't end up voting, even if they recognize why they're not voting, or why, even if they recognize it or not, it doesn't matter. Ultimately, like, I wish more people would get activated to go out and vote, but the reality of the matter is, until either fucking side, and this is specifically the Democrats I'm talking about here, okay, until the Democrats actually actively communicate to broad majorities of the public that if voting for the Democrats will actually genuinely improve their lives, improve their material conditions in a meaningful way, and that the Democrats are actually on board with genuinely improving their lives in a meaningful way. Easy to communicate, easy to understand, responsive policies, right? Until that happens, most people are not going to fucking go out and vote. Okay? IDF reservist mental health officer ousted from role after social media comments. How do you have so many viewers while having so many L takes? What's your secret? I'm hot. That's what it is. Yeah. It's just like, I think my secret is what you consider to be an L take. 3 months down the line, you will consider to be a W take that you thought about all along. Except right now you're resistant and hostile to it. But when it does become the reality, okay, because oftentimes I am right simply too early, okay? There are times when I'm wrong, of course. I'm a human being after all. But oftentimes I'm right. I'm just too early to the fucking game. And most people are inherently hostile to change, inherently hostile to and resist any sort of like change in communication. So they just operate on fucking vibes. And then 12 months later, suddenly hate you and splinter off into a hater community. Of course. Yeah. I suspect this is already a person there. You know? Good response. I mean, you're pro-Palestine, it seems. So I don't know why you're fucking what you're considering to be an L take here. And you're anti-smoking, as am I. So I don't know what's going on here. All right, but let's get back to it. Trump is a dream for the status quo. Every push to make the liberal pass common good policies is turned down by if you don't vote for us, vote for him. It's the same in France as 2012. Yeah. Do you think voting because of harm reduction is bad? I don't think voting because of harm reduction is bad. I do think, however, that most people don't vote on that basis, and the Democrats don't do enough to actually engage in harm reduction. The harm that they're reducing gets smaller and smaller every election cycle. And that is partially because harm reduction is the only fucking advocacy that they engage in within their own base. And that's really fucking stupid, because you're just missing a massive, massive amount of people that you could be activating, bringing out to the fucking polls. You know? I mean, I don't think that's true with respect to labor or trans LGBT rights. Yeah, again, notice how you're not saying that about immigrants right now, because the Democrats have dropped that from their policies, right? So like last election cycle, you would say that, you would say trans and LGBT rights, and then you would also say immigrants, right? Like Republicans are doing horribly poor things with immigrants. Like Democrats will protect immigrants. Notice how you don't say that anymore, because they shut that communication off because they themselves are now pushing for a right-wing immigration bill. So every election cycle, they just like pick and choose another thing that they are going to capitulate to the right on. And I personally find that to be unconscionable. I personally find that to be immoral. And I also personally find that to be disastrous. Notice how you're not also saying, well, what about Muslims, right? Yeah. What about Muslims? Because that was another good one that you could use if you only cared about harm reduction, right? Oh, Trump will be so much worse on Muslims. Trump will be so much worse on immigrants. Okay, but you're that doesn't mean that this gives you an opportunity to be fucking harmful yourself, right? So that's it. There is obviously issues where the Democrats are genuinely better than the Republicans on. That's abortion and protecting the medical decisions that people make. And that's a huge issue. Problem is, you know, when you got Trump at the top of that ticket, it seems to me like obviously in a place like Missouri, people are still voting for abortion, but also simultaneously voting for Donald Trump. Okay? Chomsky made a good point about voting, and that's something you just do, and then you get back to the real work of organizing and growing a movement. Yeah, it's the voting is still the least consequential, most significant thing you can do, for sure. And I understand the argument that Chomsky is making, even though he is 850 years old. He was there when democracy was invented. He knows a thing or two about that sort of thing, right? However, having said that, a lot of people don't operate on that basis. This is what I'm simply stating. It's like harm reduction over and over again is not going to carry you across the finish line, okay? Harm reduction didn't carry the Democrats across the finish line because you can't out-compete. You can't out-harm reduction argument your way out of a bad candidate or a bad campaign. Hillary Clinton demonstrated that reality, right? So that's precisely the reason why I always say, like, you know, you can say harm reduction all day, every day. This is not one of those communities where that shit's going to fly in general, because I'm analyzing the actual policies and the impact that those policies have on people's lives. I think that the Democratic Party should drop that as well. They dropped the identity politics stuff, and I really do hope that they'll drop this shit eventually as well, because it would be a significantly better way to argue, a significantly better mechanism to draw out more support, more popular support, get more people to vote for you in states where people have completely lost confidence in you, the Democratic Party, if you were to actually advocate for direct policies that help people's lives, okay? The direct policies that help people improve their material conditions. That's what politics is. What are you going to give me at the end of the day is a real simple question that people must ask. And the Democratic Party's response can't simply be, well, we're better than the Republicans, marginally better than the Republicans. You know what I mean? It's just not, it's not going to work. And it doesn't work. Demonstrably, it doesn't work. I don't know the reason why they do this, but Harris is gaining on all the good polls, and then there are right-wing pollsters deciding to fuck the averages, Lamau, and then Emerson with a random grenade. Yeah, the thing is, Kamala Harris gaining on all of these good polls simply does not carry her across the finish line. If you recall, these are still within the margin of error. That's number one. It just simply shows that momentum is on her, is favoring her at this time. None of these polls actually show that Kamala Harris is definitely winning tomorrow. Okay? This is something that you have to remember. Now, obviously, post-convention bumps don't necessarily immediately lock you in. If that was the case, the caucus would have been president. You know what I mean? Like, I think he got like a 12-point bump after the convention. Obviously, it didn't fucking matter. So, even with all of that, even with all of the, like, I obviously do care about polling. I'm not going to fucking sit here and be like, oh, it's 2020, polls were misleading. I'm not going to say that. 2016 was the last time that polls were like definitely off base. This shows momentum. That's a good thing. However, even if they showed a massive increase, right, post convention, for example, it still wouldn't necessarily mean all that much in terms of like what things may look like come November. Okay, I am a poll believer, as in like I do look at polls. I look at and analyze polls on a regular basis when the election cycle comes around. But having said that, it's not the end all be all. There are examples where people are doing well post convention, get a big bump after convention, and then they end up losing. There are examples where obviously you don't see a massive bump post the convention and you end up winning. So why do you think so many down ballot Democrats are polling so much better than Harris in the presidential race? Is that the down ballot Republicans are just worse? In some instances, that is the answer. There's a lot of untested or genuine failures on the Republican side. Untested in the sense that like they have no fucking long-term tenure that you can point to, like Carrie Lake, who's a fucking freak and a weirdo, and like she's gonna get absolutely destroyed in Arizona. You have that guy, the troop that was exploded in Nevada, for example, who's not even from Nevada, but he's like running. Like you have a lot of people on the Republican side that are untested, that don't have any sort of like policy that they can point to, or don't have any tenure that they can point to. They don't really have like a built-in infrastructure for canvassing, and they're just fucking running, and Trump likes them because they're freaks, right? And that is actually part of the reason why in some of these races, the down ballot races are actually performing better than the top of the ticket. Having said that, however, okay, the other reason is, in my opinion, the other reason is because the Kamala Harris campaign is not doing a decent enough job separating themselves from the Joe Biden campaign. They have done that with like pricing, right? They've done that with grocery prices, but they haven't done a clean break on a lot of other stuff, including but not limited to Gaza. Okay. There are still a lot of things that are unpopular with the Biden administration that the Harris ticket has not actually communicated their way out of. I personally suspect the immigration part of the equation is also a big deal. But of course, polling doesn't show that. Well, it's because it's an untested narrative, because the Republicans have never counter-messaged or even tried to drop it. Now, of course, that is an issue. They have not tried it, and it might be too fucking late by the time they finally come to their senses, okay? When they finally come to their senses and decide, like, maybe we shouldn't be running in this, like, fucking super right-wing immigration policy shit, it's probably going to be far too late. So we'll see, okay? Nate Silver has an interesting take. Latest Nate Silver forecast: Trump's chances of winning are up +5 electoral votes, with Harris is at 272, Trump 266. What? Who is favored to win the presidency? Chance each candidate has of winning the electoral college or the popular vote in 2024 presidential election, and our best predictions on the outcome based on 40,000 simulations of our model. Harris's electoral college victory probability is at 47.3%. Trump is at 52.4%. But the popular vote probability, Harris is at 63.8%. The predicted electoral college, the predicted electoral votes that she arrives at is 272. The predicted popular vote share is at 50.3%. Wait, I don't understand how this works, though. Check his PA analysis. It's in one of your tabs. Yeah, I want to see what Pennsylvania looks like, because this race is going to come down to chance of winning is based on Nate Silver's model. Predicted electoral votes is based on just polls. His model thinks Kamala should have had a much larger lead in PA than polls are showing. It's cooking her in his model. Yeah, I think this race is going to obviously come back. This race is going to come down to Pennsylvania. And obviously Trump knows that. They're playing defense in places like North Carolina. They're pumping a little bit in places like Georgia. But ultimately, I think it's just, Pennsylvania is the major part of this problem. And she's showing another problem. It's been a while since we've seen a poll showing Harris leading in Pennsylvania. A high-quality poll showing Harris ahead in PA would make a big difference right now. Weird update today. Harris ticked up slightly in our national polling average, but lost ground in our forecast and is now less than 50% against Donald Trump. One reason is that the model's convention bounce adjustment, which affects the forecast, but not the average. There's a large population of Arabs and Muslims in PA. The Gaza genocide could lose it. 170,000 registered Muslim voters. Anyway, having said all of that, let's get to Harris and Walz returning on the campaign trail.
For the White House, Vice President Kamala Harris and Tim Walz hitting the road in the battleground state of Georgia for a second day as Donald Trump gets ready to blitz critical swing states. Our chief White House correspondent, Mary Bruce, is on the trail in Savannah, Georgia. Mary, good morning.
Hey, Wick, good morning. Well, the Harris campaign sees real opportunity here in Georgia. They are hoping to expand the map, put this key state firmly back in play, now with less than 70 days to go. This morning, Kamala Harris is gaining ground in the critical Sun Belt states. Harris and running mate Tim Walz boarding their campaign bus in Georgia, a state where Donald Trump has been leading. But this morning, a new Fox News poll shows Harris now up by 2 points. That poll also suggesting she's closing the gap in Arizona, Nevada, and North Carolina.
Remember, all of these are within a margin of error, okay? All of these polls are within a margin of error. I'm not just saying this because, like, I want to fucking be a naysayer. I want to make you, like, not feel excited. Everyone is doing brass summer. Everyone's lived the fuck up. Like, this is not, it's good. This is promising if you are a Kamala if you're a Mamala fan, okay, if you're riding with Mamala, it's promising. Don't say remember 2016. It does not. No, we're not talking about 2016 here, okay? I'm not saying these polls are cucked in the same way that the 2016 polls were. That's not the argument here. The argument here is that they are still within a margin of error, and therefore this does not spell a broad victory in the way that you think it does, especially when you factor in Pennsylvania, okay? Remember that. Remember that when you look at these numbers, okay? Yeah, margin of error is plus minus 3.
In battleground Georgia, a state President Biden won narrowly in 2020, Harris and Walz reaching out to rural voters, hoping for a repeat victory. In Hinesville, greeted by the Liberty County High School Marching Band.
My previous job to this was, of course, public school teacher and coach, which I wear with pride.
Walz leaning into his own rural roots in Minnesota. His experience as a social studies teacher and former high school football coach now central to their campaign message. The ticket then stopping for barbecue in Savannah, out shaking hands and snapping selfies. Harris, well aware she can't just rely on those urban centers like Atlanta in a race expected to be so close. Trump also hitting key states, targeting the Rust Belt, today in Michigan and Wisconsin.
I mean, yeah, this is a good way to look at it as well, for sure. Individual national polls. Love people reacting to polls when you can just look at this holistic picture instead, courtesy of Vote Hub, that shows A/B rated pollsters only. Okay. National polls not a measure you're looking for, then look at state polling instead. Battleground state polling averages. It's still within the margin. Okay, it's still within the margin. And it's promising for Kamala Harris's campaign, but you have to understand it is absolutely still within the margin of victory or defeat.
Before heading to must-win Pennsylvania.
Just because of the way votes total, most past the 270 involve PA. To win without PA, you would have to win most of the rest of the swing states. Yeah, Arizona, Nevada, Wisconsin, Michigan, North Carolina, and Georgia. Doing that and losing PA is pretty unlikely. Yeah, there is no pathway to victory where you win Arizona, Nevada, Wisconsin, Michigan, North Carolina, and Georgia, and then fucking lose Pennsylvania. That'd be insane.
Now here,
like you would have to run such a good campaign in all of those other places, but such a bad one in Pennsylvania. I don't know how the fuck that would happen. Law is going to be the Selena Meyer election.
Here in Georgia today, Kamala Harris and Tim Walz will sit down together for their first big interview of this campaign. They have been facing criticism for not doing a formal press conference or an in-depth interview. And then looking ahead to the coming days, Harris is expected to be spending a fair amount of time in debate prep. Of course, her first face-off with Donald Trump coming up right here on ABC on September 10th, with just 12 days away.